Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Hall, and this is Coffee Talk.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Perlak, chair of the guitar department at Berklee College of Music, and welcome to another Coffee Talk. We're joined as usual this morning by our assistant chair, Sheryl Bailey. Hey, Sheryl.
Hey Kim and everybody, I'm actually hydrating. I had lots of coffee earlier, so
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Ben Cody is also here as usual, our senior coordinator. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning.
And Ben, you're reporting this morning from the office and not from underground on the T, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm moving up in the world.
Ben was like one of those on-site weather reporters the last couple of weeks.
Had a couple of interactions with
Yeah,
some bees and
it was quite something. Um, so our guest today we're thrilled to have is Assistant Professor of Pro Music, Tim Hall. Hey, Tim. Thanks for being here.
hello, hello. I have a handy dandy milk bottle
That's right.
with me
He
this
has a
morning.
milk bottle, but
So.
it's not in substitute for coffee. Tim's young son is in his arms, joining us, our very first
Absolutely.
baby on Coffee Talk. Um, so there's going to be a lot of talk, I'm sure, at some point about balance, which you're
Oh,
demonstrating
yes.
literally. But Tim, the first question we generally ask people, because of the name of the show, is do you drink coffee? And if so, how do you take it? And I'm sure that there's some kind of caffeinated beverage in your life as a new dad.
Yeah,
So tell us
absolutely.
about that.
Um, so coffee is something that has grown more in my life with my partner because she absolutely loves coffee. I am a caramel iced latte with oat milk kind of person, or anything that's kind of on the sweeter side. For me, I never really had a strong connection to coffee growing up. It was often just I interestingly only drink coffee in high school at summer band rehearsals because we were at summer band camp and we were up super early, and like that would be really the only time that I drink coffee. But more recently in my life, absolutely do drink it. So anytime I can find like caramel iced latte or like a cinnamon bun flavored latte or anything like that, I like a sweet coffee.
I love it.
That or some tea. I'll do like a London fog, some tea with some Earl Grey with some oat milk.
How did that start?
My wife as well. She very much drank that as well. So I tried it one day and I was like, oh, this is tasty. Throw a little honey in there and I'm good to go.
There you go. That's great. Another thing we like to start with is about first days, because so many of the people who listen are experiencing like their first year at Berklee or their first semester, and they're trying to get a feel for it. And you've had a number of different first days in your different roles, and just reflecting, if you pick one or two of those, were there things that stood out to you that you feel like you've carried on with you, like things that happened in
Mm.
your first impressions that you feel like were significant for you?
First days. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I came to Berkeley in 2013.
Mhm.
I had just finished my master's at Iowa State in higher ed and student affairs and was hired as a residence director at 98 Hemingway um, here at Berkeley. And moving from Iowa, being from the Midwest, um, it was a bit of a shocker because though I'm originally from Detroit, and though it's a metropolis, I didn't really live in the city. I didn't really grow up in the city downtown or anything. I felt like that's what I was getting when I first moved here to Boston. And even prior to this, it was small college towns. I lived in Iowa, Minneapolis, and Ohio before moving to Boston. And so my first impressions moving to Boston was that I hated it. I did not like it here at all. It was a struggle. And because I think some of the factors were the pace. the pace here felt faster than what I was used to. I think I also remember it being really cold and rainy the first couple of days of me moving here. And I was just like homesick and I was sad and it was new and it was a bit confusing. I never took a train. I never took like we didn't have a local transportation system in other places I lived, similar to Boston. And also the places that I lived in prior to this, I also had um, a strong population of fraternity brothers, and that wherever I moved prior, it was an easy. I can go and connect with a group of people that we had similar interests. We were connected through this organization that we all were proud to be a part of, and I had kind of instant friends. And I thankfully there were a few brothers that lived here in Boston, but there's not a strong group, a strong number of individuals from my fraternity that lived here. So it was kind of like my first time moving to a place where I was a bit on my own comparative to other places. Like when I moved to Iowa for the first time, I moved in with a fraternity brother. When I lived in Minneapolis, I moved into a fraternity brother's house. When I went to my undergrad is Bowling Green State University in Ohio. Um, my
Mm.
first day there, I was comfortable because I had been going to Bowling Green to hang out with my big sister who went there since my freshman year of high school. So I knew where I was going. I had a familiarity. I knew people already. So moving to Boston was, I think, the first time I had moved and felt alone, um, which was just a unique and jarring experience, for sure.
You know, I want to take a minute and have you talk a little bit about your trajectory from what you studied in your undergrad and your musicianship, and then the decision you made to do graduate work in student affairs and have this part of your career start. And then most people who know you, who are listening, know that you've made a transition to the faculty in it here at Berklee, all the while in both positions that you've had at Berklee, maintaining your art career and your professional music career.
Yeah,
So there's so
for sure.
much there to talk about, but could you talk a little bit about your undergrad experience as a musician and in what you studied and why you made the decision to do your grad work in student affairs? What drew you to that?
For sure. And it actually starts quite before that. Because in high school I studied music. We had a program where you could specialize in the arts, you could specialize in medicine, you can specialize in business. So I was able to essentially kind of major in music in high school. And thankfully, growing up in a place like Detroit at a very young age, one, it's a music mecca. So like the city and the community values the arts at such a core to the fabric of the place I live. On top of that, growing up in a Black city and having that represented and visible to me, growing up validated this like opportunity or option that like, oh, I can be a professional musician. There's so many people who are professional musicians in my world that I'm looking at, that I see, that are pulling me into to space. So there was kind of like, I had a lot of big brothers in the music community here who at a very young age, I was being pulled into bars and going to festivals and sitting behind stage and seeing them perform, saying like, yo, go sit in that corner and watch. So by 17, I was playing professionally. I was playing gigs, getting paid in bars. I was playing festivals and whatnot. We had, cats who were a little further along in their career saying like, cool, it's your turn. And, he's putting us younger cats onto stages. So at a very young age, I was able to see the viability of music, and I wanted music as a career. And I was very burnt out because it was such a big part of my life throughout high school, that I decided to major in sports management for undergrad. So I've also have a sports background, and started playing golf and caddying at a very young age. So aside from music, I was very, very invested in making golf my career as well. Wanted to try to go pro and whatnot out of high school. tried to walk on to my D1 team in undergrad and choked. And completely dropped the ball in tryout, and decided to study sports management and minor in entrepreneurship for undergrad. We had a really strong program. And music was on the side. So I was still gigging back in Detroit. Like I would drive home on weekends to gig and play shows. And then I joined our campus gospel choir, and we had a strong program. Our gospel choir toured. We so did a Southern tour and an East Coast tour with the gospel choir. We hosted a annual gospel conference and festival where actually Berklee came in and performed. Members of their, I think, Reverence Gospel Choir at the time had like come out to the conference and performed. So music was this kind of like very important part of myself, but it was on the side is sports and really academic excellence. I was like the quintessential overly involved kid on presidents of organizations and 5 internships, and very focused on how do I make sense of this career in golf. So I worked for the Professional Golf Association, the Ladies Professional Golf Association, all throughout undergrad. And once I graduated, it brought me to Minneapolis. I was doing my internship with the PGA Tour out there, and I jumped anywhere I traveled. I jumped into the music scene. So as soon as I moved to Minneapolis, I got a chance to dive into that music scene, go to open mics and gig and play at some really dope venues. Dakota Lounge being one of them, which like so many big heads have played there, and like to get to play there within a summer was like a really cool opportunity. So I think moving to a new city validated my ability to say like, oh, I'm capable of like networking and jumping into a new environment and like seeing how I fit in, seeing how I stack up against other musicians, and am able to gig and make a little bit of money on the side there. I then realized that I like golf was no longer a thing that I wanted to pursue in terms of the event operation side of things. And because, like I said, I was very involved in undergrad, I went and applied for my fraternity's executive office. So I moved to Iowa City. That's what we were founded at the University of Iowa. And I think it was a really cool thing for me because I was so involved in the org. It helped to solidify, or it helped to uncover that I really enjoyed my undergrad experience, and that I had so many advisors and mentors that helped to get me where I was, that I just loved it. I really did enjoy my undergrad experience. And I think that helped me understand like, oh, student affairs is an option here for you. There's a lot of my fraternity brothers that are in education, and they work in higher ed. So when I moved to Iowa City and started to work with my boss, he kind of helped me to realize like, oh, it's a viable career path for myself. So and again, moving to a new city, Iowa City, it was work and it was music. So I instantly dove into the local scene, became a bit of a big fish in a small pond, and helped to start a couple of bands, and got dabbled into recording for my first time, and kind of building a band from scratch was also a first there. 2 years I worked, and then got into Iowa State in Ames, Iowa. And in Iowa, it also helped to uncover my love for performance poetry. So I joined a poetry collective called More Than Words, and really honed in on performance poetry and spoken word, joined some collectives and was performing a lot more in general, both with, bands and poetry. So moving to Ames, Iowa, jumped into grad school, and I was a part of 3 bands throughout grad school. And I was, working on campus in an assistantship for the Multicultural Student Affairs Office. And I was a housing director for a fraternity house. Yeah. And going through grad school, working at a music college had never been a topic we addressed in grad school. We talked about 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, for-profit, nonprofit. Like we talked about all these gambits, and it took one professor who just kind of understood my love for music. She was like, yo, have you ever considered working at like Berklee? I know someone. And one thing led to another. I met this colleague at a conference, and I applied to Berklee. It was I think either residence life or student activities, and I was like, as long as I get into Berklee, I don't I don't really care what role I take. And thankfully, having the experience, working in the fraternity house, led me to the residence life office. So I moved from Iowa State here, and it took me a couple of years to kind of like get my feet wet and figure things out in this local scene. But that was like my journey to Boston. Like that's how I kind of arrived. And there's like a whole subset of other things that happened
Right,
once I got
exactly.
here. But just to kind of take a minute, like that's how I arrived
I
here
love it.
in Boston.
I love that you shared the story, and thank you for doing that in such a detailed way, because I think I love about the way you talked about it, and even the way you just in the very beginning talked about what you care about in your life and what you remember about moving here. You have a mindset that's clearly like a translatable mentorship teacher mindset. When you tell your story about moving here, you're putting yourself in the shoes again. You can see like you're putting yourself back in your shoes of someone who's moving, and what does it feel like, and what makes it hard, and what makes it challenging, and they're like peeling back the layers that are behind what someone might share. And then this whole story about your life, it also shows that you're sensitive to the challenges that you were experiencing and that others were experiencing, but you also saw all these opportunities. And then you wanted to be a professional golfer, and you had a terrible audition, a terrible tryout. It didn't crush you. It just led you to another way of participating in that. No matter how bad it felt, you saw some things happening that could be really, really cool if I don't let it just bring me down. And then it wasn't like you thought, well, now I've made that choice and I'm stuck here. You went and found other avenues that came out of that were just as interesting to you, that led you to a master's degree, that led you to other musical opportunities, that led you to connections that you could make. And I think what's powerful for me about that is that sometimes I think our students are so afraid to do things that they feel are like what they think are taking them away from a main mission, that they don't see that maybe the main mission is the personal mission of creativity and mentorship and whatever it is for you, entrepreneurship, and that there are many different professional avenues, and pursuing one does not necessarily diminish the other. And I think that's so strong in your story, because the next thing I'd love for you to talk about just a little bit is when you came to Berklee, you were a staff member, and there are so many staff members who are wonderful musicians. And we often hear people say like, well, if you're working on the staff side of music, does that preclude you from being on the performance side or on the faculty side? Like, how did you make that leap? Or is that like a hard line? And for you, it was, I think, a more fluid process because of the way that you think of your professional career in general. Like it's an easy fit to be in pro music, it seems, because pro music is about creating your own career and your own personal path. And clearly that's what you've done, even if it wasn't in a traditional music avenue. Could you talk about that for a minute?
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate the reflection on that. And I truly believe everything that I'm doing now, like it can be traced back to something from my childhood. Like there can be traced back from something from teenhood to early adulthood and so forth. There's so many building blocks to what I'm doing now that connect to my personality, which was like being a yes person. So for me, I said yes to a lot of stuff. And I
Mm.
think um saying yes allowed me to explore, allowed me to like get my own kind of perspective on something, whether I liked it or didn't like it. And then saying yes always led to another yes. It's like saying yes to one thing put me in a room, put me in a conversation, connected me to someone else that eventually led to another thing. I can almost guarantee it. It's something that I talk to my students about often as well. So like, moving here and like realizing, oh, I'm capable of one being at Berklee. So Berklee was something I knew about in high school, didn't even consider auditioning to to attend as a student. So I was very intimidated. I think I just dealt with intimidation like and insecurities like any other young person or musician, and just never applied. And when I realized like, oh, I could work there. That's interesting. Cool. Let me make this happen. And for me, anytime I like realized there was a like outcome for me career wise, it and I processed and thought about it for a while. And once I zoned in on it, it was just kind of like that's the goal. That's the thing that I have to do. So even, realizing my professor had this person that I can connect with, like there's never been an opportunity that's opened up for me that didn't come from networking or interacting with people and having a relationship with individuals and making, a good impression with individuals. So I met this person at a conference, they got a vibe from me and connected me to Rosemary, who's still at Berklee. And moving here, getting into my time in residence life, I feel like I came in at such an amazing time at the college. Like, I've been here now 11 years. So at the time it was a bit different. It's hard to say. We had different people in leadership. It was a different time at Berklee that I really cherish. And I came into the residence life office with such a really dope group of colleagues, individuals I'm still in relationship with now. And over time, I think working in residence life has a way of making you tired because you're on call, you're interacting with students outside of the classroom. Like you're interacting with all of the things that they are navigating that doesn't necessarily that isn't focused on academics, but it impacts their academics. Um, Relationships, familial, personal, romantic, to just basic living habits, dealing and navigating with depression, suicide ideation, um, dealing with working and supporting students who are navigating various disabilities, helping them also understand and learn how to navigate this system that is college, how to navigate the city that is Boston. It definitely took a toll on me, and I was tired. I think I just was really tired of being on call and kind of navigating my artistry in such restricted ways that I was still able to go out and do open mics and go to Wally's and do jam sessions and so forth. I was limited on what I could accept. So I think in some ways it helped me really focus on establishing myself at Berklee, and then like slowly digesting the local scene and getting to know people and checking out places. So I became a frequent at Wally's. I became a frequent at the Lizard Lounge. I became a frequent at the Cantab Lounge, um, Haley House in Dudley. I really got to slowly connect with the local music scene, I think, in a really cool way. I then realized, I think in my fourth year in residence life, I was ready. It was time for me to make the leap professionally. I felt like I was getting a bit comfortable. Um, I had been used to moving around every 2 to 3 years, and I felt like, okay, I've gotten enough of residence life to realize it's not the like career. It's the stepping stone to the next thing. And thankfully had I think I had come across Stephanie Henning, and I went to something about the Career Center, and I remember her mentioning, she was looking to build a team, and I shot my shot. I scheduled a meeting with her, and I said I was really interested in transitioning into a Career Center. This is my background. These are my interests. This is what I'm doing, and thankfully she added me to the team.
Yeah.
And to be able to kind of, I think, bring my artistry. I was one of the few individuals who were being hired, who were professional, who were playing professionally, and gigging regularly and so forth. So I think she, saw that on top of my higher ed experience as something that would be valuable. And I think for me, because of my roles in college, the leadership roles and so forth, I was often a mentor to younger individuals coming into the school. So I think the career coaching aspect for me, I was really excited because it was something I think was natural to me, and wanting to help individuals understand what resources are available to them, and also understand their own skills and their own capabilities.
Right.
I did
Right.
that for a few years.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
After
yeah,
what?
go ahead. Keep going.
Well, I was
Go
saying
ahead.
after that, it was again, I think, another internal, like, okay, what is it? What's next? I think in the Career Center, because my job was to help students figure out their dream,
Hmm.
I spent so much energy doing that and not enough on my own me. And I think I was getting a bit restless with, like, okay,
Right.
I'm helping individuals map out this framework to their dream job or their dream career, and I'm not doing that for me.
Mhm.
Maybe I need to step away from the Career Center in this particular way and move back into the classroom, which that focus is on my grad school experience. So in grad school, my focus was classroom teaching. So I taught for 2 years in grad school. So moving to faculty was this kind of like, oh, I'm capable enough to be back in the classroom at a place like Berklee. What does that look like? And networking with Toki and Sean Hagen in pro music helped me realize that pro music was the ideal place for my skill set.
Yeah, I think this is a great story again because you kept really checking in with yourself and then checking in with your environment, and being willing to make connections to make changes that would serve you and also bring different parts of your skill set to the forefront. And while you were telling the story, there are different points where I saw Sheryl react, especially when you talk yes to things. And we just interviewed Rob Jasko from MP&E, and he was talking about the
Yep.
question, asking, how can I help? Is a great question to start asking, to open up opportunities and find ways to put your skill set forward. And Sheryl, I'm wondering what's on your mind as you've listened to Tim and talk about his trajectory.
Yeah, well, I did write that down about say yes, because, that's always another opportunity is always there. And you do find out what you're good at and what you're not good at, right? I mean, I definitely did that when I moved to New York. I was like, oh, I want to do all these things, and some things, yeah, maybe they weren't your strongest thing, and that really helps you get that focus that you need. But I was also just thinking about just your sense of networking, right? Because that's really, these are always the questions that students are like, how is this going to happen? Or even, their parents are like, oh my God, can we let you go have a career in music? And actually, I just got this book was mailed to me called Band People, which I heard the author on NPR, and I called in to connect with him. And he was just talking about their interviews and just stories about the life of a musician. And Ben is also, we were pro music majors, right? So we're all
Mm.
pro music. But this thing of like, it's all about the connections and figuring that out, how you connect to people, and then also how you want to be seen, and how you want to utilize your skills in the marketplace, right? And you know it's often that thing. I mean, almost all the gigs I ever get are just because somebody heard me play somewhere. And it could be like I was playing in a broom closet, and for one, I'm like, but you're still always going to do 100%. You're in the little broom closet, you're going to put it out there like you're at Madison Square Gardens. And then there happened to be the person behind that broom calls you and gives you the next gig that changes your life, right? So I mean, I think that's great that you're bringing that up and talk. So just talk about that more, like, because sometimes people are shy, or they're like, I don't want to. Maybe they won't like me, or maybe I shouldn't call this player because they're not going to like my playing. Like, how do you overcome your fears and just try to get into the community?
One thing that I think has been vital for me, um, is similar to what Rob shared in terms of how can I help. So I offer my services more so than anything. Whenever I come across an artist, I see that I vibe with them and what they're making. My business card is going up to them saying like, "Yo, incredible performance, super dope. I'm a saxophonist. If you need saxophone on anything, we'll love to connect." Get their Instagram, and we link. Over time, it's elevated to me also creating, because I've built a portfolio, I created a Spotify playlist of all songs that I'm on. So I also send that as my session playlist, as like a bit of a portfolio for folks to also get a range for, what I've done that's already out there. I think that's something that came a little later, but I think the very, very first thing that I would share with anyone is go and seek out the community that you're looking to be a part of. If you want to play more and you want to gig more, then go and find some open mics. Go and find some jam sessions. Search on Facebook, ask people, ask around, and be okay with being kind of inquisitive enough to know, like, where is it going? Where is it happening? Because sometimes that's the inspiration you need. That's the encouragement you need, is seeing other people do it. Sometimes you need other people to get up on stage and say, "Hey, this is my first time up here. I've never done this before." For you to then be like, "Oh, I'm not alone in this. Like, I'm not the only person who's a newbie, who's scared out of their mind, who's nervous, who, you know, I think that has been the encouragement that I've needed over the years, is just being in an environment that's been creative and saying like, oh, wow, this is other people are cool. Like, the other people's stories are cool. And oh, that's something that's relevant to me, or like I was really impacted in some way. And I can't believe you got up there and shared that. So being in awe of other people and finding that connection, finding that community, might give individuals the spark, the encouragement, the bravery to get up and share their own story. And once you start doing that, I say just continue to do it. So for me, it took like going to Lizard Lounge on Sundays at their poetry open mic to be exposed to slam poetry. I had never heard of slam. My first time seeing it was at the Lizard Lounge, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is dope. Of course, I'm gonna throw myself up there, and if I'm excited to jump into this. And it took returning, it took connecting with other people and hearing them say like, "Yo, can you?" The other thing that I ask my students, like, can you receive a compliment? Can you receive validation and not make it awkward? Can you receive it and so like, thank you, like, I agree,
Yeah,
rather than like,
that is,
oh no,
yeah, no,
oh, I just like,
that's
you
really
give some
important.
excuse.
That, I think
Yeah.
that's what you're saying there is really important, because I mean, I had to learn that myself. And because you're working on your thing, and you're critical about it. I'm still to this day super critical about
Absolutely.
everything, about every detail.
Yeah.
And when I was younger and someone would come up, and I would just shy away from that. And actually the people are giving you that compliment to connect with you. right? And so getting that point where you can just see that, like, hey, you're still working on your stuff, but that doesn't mean you can't take that in. And then that's a doorway for connection, right? Which is what we're
Absolutely.
talking about, is making those connections that feel good, right? You want to be, you want to jump into that side of things
Absolutely.
instead of the critical thing. That's
Yeah,
hard, right?
absolutely. It's still something I navigate and struggle with. And I've also learned to like use it as a reminder during times where it's just tough. Sometimes you're in a funk, and that it just is. And one of the things I started to do in my live performance, especially in like a more intimate setting, is I bring a notebook and I encourage people to leave notes or messages or poems from anything that was they inspired, that was inspired by my performance. And sometimes I'll just like go and read that, just to kind of, if I'm in a funk, going to read other people's perspectives, because it's learning to like value that other people also have good taste. Like you yourself has good taste. Like you like the hamburger, or you like the thing over there, you like that outfit, or you like that style of music. Like you yourself have good taste, which means that other people probably have good taste. So if someone else is telling you that they like something or they were inspired by something, then it's okay to take that in and receive it. While also, as you get to a certain level in your career, it's okay to be critical. Like I'm critical because I care about my music. I'm critical because I care about improving and getting better. I care about elevating. So like criticism isn't all bad. It's just understanding that all of these things, um like I try to think about equilibrium. Like, how do I become in equilibrium with the things that are going on in my life? With, oh, okay, this performance was bad because I didn't practice and prepare myself. I can be critical of myself to say, like, yo, you could have spent a little more time on this, which is why you probably didn't feel as comfortable when you were performing it live. And you're not a shit player. Like you're not crappy either. You just realize that you had a tough week and you might need to figure out a way to make some adjustments so you give yourself a little more time. So I think equilibrium is important to think about when you have emotions. It's okay to have all of the range of emotions, but what makes the most sense for the particular situation? When do you need to give yourself a little more grace and a little more, space? When do you need to, hunker down and focus a little more? When do you need to explore and get out of your head a little more? So how do those things show up, and how do you give them, enough value per situation or per thing going on in your world, is what I try to think about.
That's great. Ben, it looks like this is again a perfect segue for the question that you usually ask. So jump in there.
Yeah, so this question we ask every guest on here, and we're always excited because everyone usually has a slightly different take on their answer. But what do you think is a question that the students here should be asking that they're not already thinking of asking?
Mm.
The space is thought. It's that not that we dropped a
Mm.
connection. He's deep in thought if you're listening.
Mm. Oh, yes, yeah. Deep in thought. That's a really cool question. Uh, hmm.
There might be many, and so
I
you
think,
pick one.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think they could be asking um more on like what does it mean to like develop, um what is it to navigate romantic relationships as a professional musician? I think that because of my perspective in like residence life and seeing the personal lives of students outside of the classroom, um, oftentimes I feel like there aren't there's the focus on the career, there's the focus on, you know, the getting better as a player, there's a focus on you know, the instrument and the big dream job and so forth. But I think maybe it's less about specific relationships, but like how do I manage life? Like what are the things about life that I'm going to be encountering that um are going to have an impact on my career, and how do I equip myself with like navigating some of those things and staying motivated in music, or being um developing resilience so that when these things in life do come up, um I'll know how to navigate them and also maintain this relationship with my career.
Mhm. Tim, do you feel that you had good sort of models for that inside music as well as outside of music, or were you feeling like a lot of what you pulled came from different parts of your life?
Mm, yes, I would say that I definitely had good examples. I also had examples that were not great that I could be like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. Don't do that. Just try to stay away from that if you can. So I think I've had like a nice balance of like of models of like individuals who were able. So one is that entrepreneurship was introduced to me at a very, very young age.
Mm.
So in high school, my senior year of high school, my youth pastor, he is currently an entrepreneur, but he worked for himself, and I interned with him, and he was like, yeah, if I don't get up and I don't make phone calls and I don't work, then I don't pay these bills, I don't eat, I don't take care of my son. So I got a very early, I think, lesson of like what is it to um turn opportunity, like to see that there's an opportunity there and leverage it on a business level, and in the internal skills, communication, talking, sales, articulating and like articulating a vision, and bringing the team members into to things. Like I got a lot of that at a very young age, and a little bit of kind of have a bit of the grind. And I think that there's a conversation around like the around grind, but I think I grew up with an individual that kind of helped me understand it, so that it applied to me building a career for myself, and it's helped me. It's given me, I think, valuable tools to navigate. How do I have a child
Who's right
and
there,
like
by the way. Yeah.
and still go and do the things that I love? So what are the skills that I need to develop to communicate with my partner that I live with, to say like, hey, this is a valuable thing to me. I know that we're stressed and we're navigating a child for the first time, but how do I communicate that need to a partner so that I can still show up as my best self for my child? And if I don't have music, if I don't have my creative expression in my life, then I'm not able to show up to her as a partner or to him as a dad.
Hmm.
And I think those are some really important things that I think I've learned, especially with him coming into the world, but even prior, of like, oh, this is a thing that I love. And there's certain things that I need in this world to feed myself with. And how do I make sure that those things are a part of my life, while also having these other things like a partner and a career and a relationship with my parents and my siblings? And like, how do I make time and like figure all of this stuff out?
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
anytime I dive into like conversations like that with students, they're always like, I'm so glad you talked about this. Like, this is a thing that I don't talk about with other, professors, or like in my friend circles. Like, thank you so much for addressing this or bringing this up. So I'm pretty vulnerable and transparent with my students because of that. And then I think it'd be pretty cool to hear them ask more about it.
Yeah, I love that because, Cheryl and Ben, when we have all these conversations, sometimes when building a healthy life comes up, it's kind of like on the side sometimes as a secondary to taking advantage of musical opportunities and growth opportunities in what we do with our art and our work. And I think what Tim has shown in this really great cup of coffee this hour is that you could focus on building a healthy life, and that in itself can lead to a lot of career and musical opportunities. And I think
Mhm.
that shift in perspective is really valuable, especially in the middle of the semester, kind of on that like very, very fast downslope towards finals that we're going to be approaching.
Yep.
People are listening to the conversation. Um, so I really appreciate that, Tim. I also will say on a personal note, you and I are in the same Berklee entering class of
Oh,
2013.
nice.
Come on, it's a
Awesome.
good class.
Yeah,
There's
it
a lot
really
of good
is. It
folks who
really
entered in
is.
2013. And so I do appreciate that sense of change that we've experienced in all kinds of ways in our
Yeah.
lives here together. So anyway, shout out to fall of 2013 class. And Sheryl, what about you? What's on your mind? What's on your mind as we roll out and end this cup of coffee today?
I think this was a really meaningful conversation about equilibrium. I think that's so important. And I'm really glad you're sharing that and you found these ways to bring that into your teaching. Um, and it's a holistic vision, which I do appreciate. We need to be approaching things more in this way. And you're all doing that with equilibrium of balancing a cute little baby on your lap there. I was impressed. You're walking the walk, you're talking the talk and walking the walk.
Yeah, I also
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you.
his acknowledgement. I felt like there were times when he affirmed some of the things I was saying,
Oh yeah, he was like,
and
all right on, daddy.
thank you to your son for participating today. Ben, what about you? What's on your mind?
I just think this was a great conversation, because talking about a lot of things that I don't think we've talked about as far as because it's always kind of around the same topic of how do you navigate building your career, but it's definitely on the side that I think needs to be talked about more. Just a lot of it's and I'm definitely going through this right now myself. It's you think that your career is going to be this linear trajectory, and it's just not how it is, and it's about just being able to be fluid with that and being able to navigate through that and do that in your personal life as well. And I think that that's some really great topics we touched upon for the students that I think really need to hear that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. We loved having you here, and we hope to
Thank you. Thank you for
revisit
having me.
it. Yeah, you're very welcome. And hopefully we'll get to do a follow-up in our future. And
Yeah,
until then,
I'd love to.
um, that would be great. Until then, we're going to keep hanging out with Tim and his beautiful son and celebrate pro music as a major with Sheryl, Ben, and Tim, and entering class of 2013. Some of you alums are out there listening, and a bunch of us. We'd like to hear from you too. So, um, we're going to hang out for a little while. And for the rest of you, thank you for being with us. And we'll be with you on the next Coffee Talk. Thanks, everybody.